back, and we're moving into our final conversation for this morning. If you're just joining us, we are going to find out all the details about Give Your Heart to a Child campaign. This is a special program seeking people to become foster parents, and it's a program through the Ministry of Human Development. We're joined at this time by Elswith Chevez, who is the Human Development Coordinator, and we have Shaneica Pitzold, who is Children's Services Officer, both the Ministry of Human Development. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Good morning.
Ladies, this is the end of February, and I always know this campaign is coming around because it fits so perfectly with Valentine's Day.
Definitely.
But it is perhaps something that a lot of people don't know exists in our country. Talk to me about the status of the foster care program in Belize.
Okay, I guess Ms. Chevez could go into the history of the foster care program a little bit for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
The Department of Human Services is responsible to identify, has two programs going, foster care and adoption.
Yeah.
Foster care is a temporary staying place for children who unfortunately cannot stay at home.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to remove for some obvious reason of abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, neglect, or being an orphan. So that's the foster care system where we work temporarily with the family to get the family up to par to parent their children. And so they will be in the care of the department temporarily, and then they go back home.
Mm-hmm.
The adoption program are for where the children is in this care of the department for a numerous amount of years, and the family is not working to get their children back. Hence the reason that the department needs to make a recommendation to the court for custody, and once custody is given to the department, that child is free for adoption.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, this is something, if we watch TV, we understand takes place other places. I don't know how much people think about our own foster care and adoption system here. Would you say there is a interest by Belizean families to take in children, whether for temporary or permanent care?
There is an interest because we have been having this campaign very vigorously for the past 2 years. And since then, we have had probably about 400 applications that comes in for various reasons. But one of the things that we would find is that from our analysis is that it is the family that would be less fortunate, that would be more open to want to foster a child.
I know that's, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but you know, I was thinking that's culturally, you know how many families, like my grandmother, would take in children. It's just, it's informally, unofficially.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's just a formalization of what our culture already is.
Exactly. But for us, why it has to be more formal is because there's a process that needs to be done in terms of doing the assessment, the interviews, and also the submission of screening documents. It's imperative that we do all these screenings to ensure that the families that we will be placing the children in does not necessarily have any conflict with the laws or would have been in our system. When I say in our system, means a perpetrator, because we cannot remove a child from a dysfunction and place them in another dysfunction. Hence the reason for it. It has to be a formal way where they are approved as a foster parent or as an adoptive family.
No,
you said that the 400 that applied, you didn't say how much, but quite a few were from less fortunate circumstances. What does that mean in terms of them actually qualifying to take in the child?
We do not look at your income
Okay.
as a means for not qualifying you.
Okay.
It just means that there are other systems that the department would need to put in place. And it varies, and it has to go back to the assessment.
Yeah.
That's very crucial in doing our recruitment. But it doesn't stop you from being approved as a foster parent because you might come from a lower social economic status. The most important thing is your heart, that you have that willingness to help a child who has been gravely, or not gravely, but seriously traumatized in terms of being abused.
I can only imagine, you know, for a child to be taken out of their home, even if it's a terrible circumstances, you know, you're being taken away sometimes from your siblings, from your parents, and it's just very traumatic. What type of people or what type of families are you looking for to help this child feel more like a child or more whole after the amount of neglect or abuse they may have been through?
I think we're looking for families who, like Ms. Chevez says, really have the willingness and the heart for it. Because from experience, I believe that a lot of families probably go into foster care with some level of expectation from the child. Well, you know, I expect the child to feel a certain type of way, to feel a sense of gratitude because maybe I'm doing something, you know, for you. But we have to look at families that, you know, won't really go in with that expectancy, but really go in with, you know, I want to come from a place where I want to help this child. I know this child has been through trauma, and I won't try to put the child back in a place where the child will feel re-victimized, you know, just let the child feel comfortable in the household. Let the child feel a part of your family, you know, because sometimes children can sense if, you know, I'm just a foster child, you know, they be treated differently. So just incorporate the child in whatever you do as a family. You know, if you have rules in your house, that foster child has to follow those rules as well. If you go out as a family and you do XYZ, then you incorporate that child as well. The child just wants to feel a part when the child is within the home.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to look at, there are established governmental institutions and homes, but this is a program separate and apart from that.
Well, yes.
Because you're not taking them to Dortimendes.
No,
you're taking
we're
them
trying to take them out of the institutions, right?
And can you explain the relationship as to why is it that we have these formal governmental institutions and still we have these programs? What is the benefit?
Okay, well, first let me talk about the continuum of care. So when we remove a child from his or her family, we go through a process. So a child is removed from home. The first option that we seek is relative, you know, because it's already traumatizing that the child is moving from the home. So we want to find a relative that can take in the child. In that absence, or if there's no relative that can take the child, then we need to look into foster care. That is our next option. So it's another family, maybe unknown to this child, but you know, it's better than the institution. Now, if we don't have any foster parents, then we need to put children in institution. And unfortunately, it's the older children, it's the sibling groups, and it's the children with special needs who end up in the child care institution. So currently we have...
the homes are actually the last resort.
Yes, it is the last resort.
Sorry.
Our last resort. And currently we have a little under 200 children in institutions countrywide, you know, so that could show you, you know, the magnitude of, you know, how important foster care is and how important it is for us to recruit more families who are more open to working with older children, sibling groups, and children with disabilities.
So what you're saying is the ideal is that you wouldn't have the children's homes, but that all these children would be in real physical homes.
Exactly.
With
That
families.
is our ideal.
That's what we are hoping for.
Now you said something very important, that there are certain clientele that are more difficult to place.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart. Special needs kids,
Yeah.
and sibling groups and older groups. What is the reason for that? What have you identified?
We have seen where it's easier to identify foster placement for children from birth to probably 9. And older than that, that's where it gets challenging to identify foster families. Sibling groups, we had at one point 7 siblings that for the family. No one in Belize is open to take 7.
And you don't want to separate them.
And we don't want to separate them. So that's where we struggle also with. And children with special needs. Any varying degree of special needs, we also have difficulties identifying families.
What's the fear from the family side? Because you work with them. If someone is open for foster care, it means they already have that big heart.
Yeah.
So what's the hesitation for this particular group?
If I could just say, People always, from the years I've been interacting with families, they struggle to work with older children because of, they say they have already have their own attitude, their own behaviors, and it's just fair. Some of them would say, well, I don't want to hold a child. When you have to find a placement and you would call them, oh, okay, let me try. It works sometimes, but not often. In terms of the larger group, I think it has a financial ramification to it. And this is where the department comes in and assists that family. We don't do like the US procedures where they pay foster parents. We do a stipend. But nevertheless, if this family would go into some kind of emergency, this is where the department comes in and assists with different needs that the family might need. In terms of special needs, that's where this challenge comes in, because we have different various special children with special needs, and I think one of the things is education, of not knowing how to. Some of them do. We have great, excellent family that works with children with HIV and cerebral palsy, but we still need a more cadre of families that would work with those special needs children.
You know, coming from a standpoint of somebody who has quite a number of children, and this
this seems like a candidate,
yeah,
Mr. Arthur.
Yeah. And you know, the funny thing, you know, I have seen the joy. I was at Mirab, and I said Mirab for a reason. And I saw a friend of mine, Miss Pipersburg, and she had a young child with her. And I said, you know, Pipe, you know, you had a child? And she said, yes, I do. And then she explained to me that she was actually fostering, but you could see the love that I couldn't tell that it was not her child. I mean, she was shopping in the cart. The little boy was very happy at the time. You know, he had a disciplinary problem, and she dealt with it like, in a way. I have 2 children. I was like, wow. You know, so I've seen where the program itself has actually worked, and that was within that last week. One of the concerns that I asked her, because yes, my heart was moved for this young baby, and he was a boy. I don't have any sons, but
He's telling you his business.
Exactly.
But I asked her. I said, "Don't you become, because it's not always a long term. It's not always that, you know, you until you're 18 and you steam off college and you wave. Sometimes it's a temporary placement. Like in the case of this young baby, they're waiting for his grandmother to come from the States if she was going to take him on. One of the issues is just the emotional, being ripped apart. You can imagine having a child with you for 2-3 years. You're already used to him getting up. You're already used to his smile. And then one day, the parent comes and says, you know what? What about me picnic? What sort of training and what sort of adjustments and counseling do the foster parents go through? I'm talking about the ideal ones, because there are good ones and bad ones. Go through and be able to deal with this emotional transition.
And that's why I said earlier, there are 2 programs running simultaneously, the foster care and the adoption. Families that comes in and say that they want to adopt would never or should never be a foster parent, because we already know that they don't have that capacity for that same scenario that you gave. So a foster family is studied primarily and only for foster care. And they understand that the child, they're temporarily taking care of this child, and that the child could be removed based on the judgment of the court. Because we make recommendation, but the courts have the ultimate decision. They're the ones that make the ultimate decision. So when we study a person that says that they want to foster, it's only for fostering. And they understand. What we do is that the social worker contacts the foster parent every so often. I won't say every month, but I will say every so often, to ensure that she or the family, how they are interacting, how they are getting along, and keeping them updated on the process at the court. Because remember that these children are temporarily in our care. We still have a care order that at the court. So whenever the social worker, the child protection officer goes to the court, they update the foster parent and said, well, I went to court today, I need to go back another 3 months for review. So they know. So if the court is saying, you know something, the mother is working towards reunification, so we will make this plan. The foster parent is aware. It is hard sometimes because even though we do a comprehensive assessment. It's a matter of the heart.
Can you tell us what the profile difference between an adoptive family is from a foster parent? What is the difference? What is the profile difference?
It's the same, just that they want to foster
One
and
have a
to
different
with
interest.
One is short term,
One
one is
is forever.
But what if I'm
But it's
confused?
almost like if you're a foster parent, you need to have that fear of separation because you
Yes.
want them to love the
Yes.
child.
Yes.
I have to throw this in here because, you know, I went to Dr. Gale's presentation on Friday and it is terrible that it was only for that small group of people who got to see it. But one of the things that just rings out from what he said was talking about what we've always said, that it takes a village to raise a child, that some children really need others to step in to support them and support the parents. So, you know, when he talked about, you know, the pain of separation, I've always thought that too, you know, like it must hurt. But it's a good thing because it means you've loved them, like you should love them when they're with you and they know that people are capable of loving them. But my question is, what type of relationship, you know, are they allowed to have afterwards? Is it a separate, once the separation is done, that's it, you know, you cut the cord and move on?
Well, I would say that is up to the parents because we only have, our care order only extends to the point where we have the children in care. So when the child is placed back with the birth family, then, you know, they have all the authority and it's up to them if they would wish to continue that relationship with the foster parent who had the child.
Let me ask someone just the basic questions. Do you have to be married to foster?
No, you don't.
Do you have to be a couple to foster?
No, you don't.
Do I have to have a high-paying job to foster?
Definitely not.
So what's the criteria?
Okay, so you just have to be over the age of 21. A mature person, you can't have any kind of criminal records. You can't come in our database when it comes to child abuse and neglect for any sort of child abuse and neglect. So I think those are the main things. Apart from that, we do our assessment, we do our home study, and so our assessment and home study and interviews that we do, that is what basically, whatever information we gather and we find on that, that is what basically qualifies you, apart from the screening documents that you must submit.
I mean, you're going to check that I'm stable, that
Yes,
I'm not like
exactly.
doing drugs at home or drunk every night, you know.
And that comes with the screening documents because you need to have the medical report, a police record.
References.
We need the references that people would give reference to your character.
Does it have to be a heterosexual couple?
Yeah.
Not exactly, but I would say we haven't really had as much same-sex couple who has come, you know, with the interest in fostering. Of course, that is a touchy topic, and you know, well, because probably our laws doesn't really, we work in the parameters of the laws, and so when it comes to certain, you know, type of persons, we have to be very careful, and because we work with the Families and Children's Act, and
there's a restriction in there for
there is
persons
not
who are
a restriction, right? But there are certain rules and guidelines that is set out within the law. For example, when it comes to adoption, like you said, a male can only adopt a male child. You know, so there are certain things that the law, you know, it doesn't really speak much to, but we are not discriminatory as to who can foster, who can adopt. As I told you before, we will do our assessment, and if that person is of sound character and of sound mind, then I don't see a problem with it, you know.
So there's sexuality. If I am a part of a same-sex couple and I want to offer myself up for fostering a child, I mean, there's no questionnaire that says, am I a homosexual?
No.
You will come to my house, you'll recognize that perhaps, you know, this is my partner and not just a roommate.
But we would also need to interview the other person. It's all the family members has to be a part, because just in the event that something would happen to you, how would that other person fit into,
So what I'm hearing from you is that it's possible.
It is possible.
Has it been done before?
We don't know, because we have done interviews where two women are living together, and but they haven't completed their application. They just came in initially. We did the initial studies, but they haven't followed through with it.
Can I
Or
ask?
some people won't really open up and say, you know, if
they
you
won't.
would, they would say, well, it's my friend, it's my, you know, roommate or whatever. So, you know, and it is not our job to say, well, you know, what is the type of relationship you have with your roommate? Because people have roommates and friends. So,
No, one of the concerns that I would probably have as a potential foster parent is, and I think it's just like the most Christian and wonderful thing. I think it definitely washes away like half of your sins. Just the joy that you get from, I watched
Yes.
my friend.
If you're a good foster parent.
If you're a good foster parent, I mean, surely heaven, you jump like so many queues in the line going to heaven by doing so. But my concern was, as a potential foster parent, was just what interference you possibly could have from other family members, because some of these things are forced care orders.
Yeah.
So you might be taking a child out of maybe an abusive family, but the uncle say, I think I fully well I'm qualified for my nephew. I don't know why you have her, and probably pass by your house. What is the instance of interference, and what protection does the foster family have that there's no interference from another aggrieved party?
And like what Ms. Pitzold said earlier, we follow the hierarchy of placement, and that means relative, foster, then the last resort would be the institution. The child protection officer needs to ensure that they do due diligence in trying to identify relative placement. If that is not possible, then it goes to the foster family. In the event that, with what you asked just now, there is a provision in the Families and Children Act that talks about an exclusion order. Because sometimes families do not want to, and then later on they come. What is in the best interest of a child is always in the forefront. Maybe they might be available, but when you do the assessment, that might not necessarily be the safe place for the child to be. So there is some provision in the law that gives the department the authority to do an exclusion order from any family member that is so aggrieved that would fail that would cause failed
Does it
placement.
happen?
Yes, it happens.
Yeah.
In some instances, yes, it does happen.
So let's talk about, because the point of this campaign is to get Kevin to make the additional step, right?
Well,
People
Don't
like
swallow already, don't
people
swallow
like
already.
Kevin,
Don't
right?
swallow already,
Because you
don't
hear it,
swallow.
it's there,
yes.
right?
Don't
So
swallow already.
it's about getting to the
I don't know if my
application.
wife is so, but I
Okay,
she
so
already
let's
young
tell it to
baby.
his wife. So that's the thing, because I think people hear this and they think, man, this is important. This is something we should all do if we are capable of taking it on, rather than having a child in an institution without, you know, the type of home environment that you'd want. They should be in a home. But what are the options? What are the time spans that we're looking at here?
In foster care, there's 4 different foster care. There is respite, emergency, long-term, and short-term.
All right, let's break that down.
placement. The respite would be for maybe someone that is always busy. So they can't commit to a child for the long term. So they might do vacations, special occasions, and weekends. So every time they would come, they could choose one child, or they can do it different children based on the preference.
So that means I could take a child out of an institution, one of the
Yes.
children's homes,
Yes.
and maybe take them for the Easter break that's coming up,
definitely.
or take them for Christmas breaks,
Exactly.
or long weekends,
That is
just
the
those
respite.
short term.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the respite is one of the, to me, the better options for persons who are not sure, you know, if this foster care thing is really what I want to do, but maybe I just want to wet my feet and try it out, you know. And the children, you know, when he talks about the separation type of thing, children in our institution, they understand respite and they look forward to it. So you see holidays come up, Easter is coming up. So children will look forward to go with a family, and they understand that it's just for a short period of time, and they will be placed back at the institution after that break. So it's something they look forward to, and we always try to encourage persons to do respite, especially for Christmas.
Can I ask this? I wonder from a child psychologist standpoint, if I'm a child who I had a wonderful mother and father, God bless me with that.
Yeah.
But I can imagine going on a respite with this family who is just a wonderful family. The son who's like me is so loved and gets all of these things, and we go to Chetumal and we go to sit in Burger King and all of these things, and we go to the toy place. And then after the vacation is over, I go back to my little room, my little bunk bed in Dortimensis. Yeah. Does it affect them negatively in terms of the long term? Short term, yes, I'm experiencing this, but long term, I deserve that. There's no reason why me as a child, as an 8-year-old, shouldn't have the same thing that you have. Yeah. How does it affect them psychologically?
I know it's hard, but one of the things that you have to understand, our children, they sell themselves. And like the respite is a stepping stone to dip your feet in the water and see how it goes. And oftentimes a respite ends up to be an adoption. Oh, good. Because the child would say, you know something, Mr. Arters, I really enjoyed being here, and he tugs at your heart. We don't do anything. That's an easy thing for doing, right? Soft we don't do anything, we don't tell them, but these children really do and sell themselves. And oftentimes the family would come, okay, let me try it a little bit more. And
we'll do weekend cares now.
Yes.
So the respite can also be weekends if I take them every weekend.
Yeah.
You know, and I hear what Kevin is saying, but at the same time, if the alternative is to spend Christmas at the home, which I know you do your best there, you know, it's still better with a family. So respite is the first one we got through. Emergency care, what is that?
Emergency is just a temporary between 1 week to 3 weeks, and it's mostly for babies. Okay. The department has a policy that no child under the age of 5 should be in an institution unless they're with a sibling group, because you don't want to separate them. So if the child protection officer needs to do a removal for a 2-year-old, that child never goes into an institution. Okay. They go
but emergency means it might be at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Exactly, exactly. And they're committed and they're ready to work with the department. Okay. And then the short term and the long term, that goes with the order from the court, whether it's 3 months or 6 months.
So 3 months would be your short term?
Yes.
And then
that
your
was
long
the
term?
interim would be the full care order for the 6 months, from 6 months to 3 years.
So the longest as a foster parent you may have a child is 3 years?
Yep. Yes. And then it goes on to adoption.
What would you say to people? Because I always hear, I mean, I think of the stories as you say them, and it melts your heart. And I just wonder, how come we don't have more people just taking the kids on? But what would you say to people about just giving it a try? Maybe I might feel, everybody feels a little bit dysfunctional in their own life, you know, if we really are honest with ourselves. True. So we say, oh man, nobody's going to give me a chance to look after a child. What would you say to people about what they need? Or maybe it's what you said before, like there's so much trauma, I won't know how to handle them when they come. What do you tell people when they come in considering becoming a foster parent, to giving their heart to a child?
You know, I would say if you just have a little bit of interest in you, just a little bit of, you know, I want to know what this experience is like, then reach out to us and give it a try. You know, you never know until you try it, right? So, like I said, people think that the process sometimes is too exhausting, but sometimes you just have to give it a try and see how it goes. Because at the end of the day, we're all looking out for the same interest, and that is the best interest of the child. And so despite all, all the processes, just really give it a try and open your hearts to these kids, despite their background, despite the trauma they've been through, despite the behaviors that they might come with, just open your heart if you're willing, and if it's just something, an inkling that you have to try this out, contact the department. We have offices countrywide. Our main office is in Belize City on 40 Regent Street. We have our website up and running under the Human Development website. The Give Your Heart page is up with all the information that you need. The application forms are up there. The screening documents are up there. But if that is not enough, you can feel free to visit the department, and we will, guide you through the process.
One of the biggest issues for families or potential foster parents is the fear. Mm-hmm. The fear that, okay, after 3 days, this might just be too much for me, as Marlene was saying. Maybe at the same time I get fired from my job, or at the same time I have a breakup with my partner, or at the same time my partner decides, you know what, I just know I hear no baby the ball right now. That's, I'm not ready for this. What is I don't want to call it a return policy because it sounds horrible.
No,
but
no.
what is the safeguard to allow for a potential foster parent who has taken on the responsibility and for whatever various valid reason says, you know what, I just can't handle this? And has that happened?
Yes, it has.
It does. It happens, and like for many reasons, and that is hard for us because it's always hard when you need to move a child from one place to another. It's a grief and loss process for that child, and that's why it's imperative that when we do the assessment, we have to do a very intense. Some people say it's a long process, but we need to get down and understand you as an individual, where you came from, how did you grow up in your family, what kind of discipline did you have. All of that encompasses who you are as an individual, and then to understand that, yes, some people might say, oh, what this beautiful child, but you don't know what this child has gone through. And oftentimes a child that is in foster care tests you to see how committed you are. So they might do things that is outside of what you would understand, and this is all we try to get in the assessment stage for you to understand the importance that you have to you should remain committed to a child, because it's unfortunate that at a young age they had to go through some horrific experience, and that's why it's important that when we do a profile and present like what we will do with you, Mr. Authors, that we will tell you what that child has gone through. So that you understand.
And that's why your test is so rigorous, because it's not one parent who can accept.
No, it has to be the family. Because when we do that, we also talk to the children. Because having 2 girls and then having a baby brother for your 2 daughters, it's something that we have to inform them. You guys have to inform them that yes, this is what we're going to do.
Or even because a child their age, because their kids can be mean too.
It changes the dynamic, so it's important.
What's the sense of, you guys are on the ground, and I might have a very clean, smooth picture in my head. But what is your sense of the Belizean people who actually take this on? Do you find that they're gratified? What is the energy that you get back from them? What's the feel that you get back from them? 'Cause a lot of people talking, country go to nothing, they pick nobody, raise and no discipline, and this is a tangible way
to help.
And save your soul.
And get forward.
Yes. Jump that queue.
I will be very honest with you. We have really dedicated citizens in Belize. I would want to name some, but I won't do that. But
and they actually want to be anonymous. That's the
and sometimes people just want to give back. But we have some people that we can call on any time of the day or night, and they will be willing to help us. And like I said, we give a stipend. Some of them don't even ask for anything. And especially with children with the special needs, like babies that are born with some special heart condition and all of that, they are so caring for these children. I want to say that people in Belize do want to help, but like I said, they don't really understand the process, and this is the reason why we are so happy that we're here on this platform to give a voice to the children that are deserving to be in a home. If I can just say, many years ago, I remember a child at one of the institutions. He begged me to be in a home because he doesn't know how it is to be in a setting with a mom and a dad. So those are the stories that gives us the motivation to go out there and try to identify families, because we take things for granted, because all of us here knows how it feels to be in a home with a father and a mother, but a child doesn't, that child did not know. So it's very hard for us sometimes, and the whole responsibility lies on my shoulders along with the officers to identify homes for children.
So the ideal would be, come Christmas time, that all the children's homes are empty. Nobody have any reason to go through a party at any children's home. Maybe the workers.
We did that with Dorothy Menzies. At one time, we had all the children out for that time.
For respite?
Yes, for the respite. But we would want more for more long term that would lead up to, or even to adopt these children, to give them a permanent home.
I mean, every
it's
time I hear,
countrywide,
Yeah.
you know, because a lot of the times we have a good amount of foster parents in Belize City, in the Kaya district, but we're looking for more foster parents in Corozal, Orange Walk, in the south, in Punta Gorda. You know, we do have a lot of children from that side. You know, so we're urging, you know, persons interested countrywide to reach out to us.
Is there a social shift though? Because I mean, the little village that I'm from, Santana, it's just something that people do. I mean, a child goes
Informally, yes, people do it.
So is it that we're having a cultural shift that families aren't really in a position now where they're taking on the foster role? Is that what we're seeing? Because I would assume that in the metropolitan areas like Belize City and San Pedro, you'd have this problem more, but in the rural areas, that it wouldn't be so much of a problem. Are we seeing an increase?
In the rural areas, no, we are not.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
God is
But
good.
I think the difference is the informal is like a neighborly arrangement versus when somebody goes in.
When
and
the authority goes
it's
in.
so bad, the authority has to go in and remove the children from your care, and then they need somewhere to go. Okay, so I heard quite a few times, and I want to be very clear so people know so Kevin knows what he's getting himself into after discussing with your wife, of course. How long is the process? What's the average length? Because somebody sees this today, their heart starts to melt and says, you know what, I'm going to do it. And then they start the process, and then they didn't quite expect it would be this long.
What happened is that we have a specific individual that does all the recruitment for foster care and adoption. So if Mr. Otter's application comes in today, that recruitment officer knows that she has 24 hours to contact Mr. Otters to just say, we receive your application, and go through some brief process with him, and then schedule appointments. And everything is based on Mr. Otters. So if Mr. Otters say, because he is so busy and I can't do it between Monday and Friday, are you available on Saturdays? Yes, we are. We work on Saturdays depending on the amount of applications that we get. So the recruitment officer goes in, do the interviews, do the assessment. We try to do at least 3 interviews, because the first one is just like an icebreaker.
Yeah.
So you kind of get to buy your data information and all of that. And then thereafter, the second interviews, everybody comes in and they do the interviews. And then maybe the third interviews is to finalize everything. Whilst the screening documents should have been submitted, the officer prepares a report, send that report to me, and then I make the final decision, yes, that person is recommended to foster or to adopt.
Okay.
So basically we will be looking at maybe 6 weeks thereabout.
All right.
Depending on the submission of the documents.
Okay.
Because that's very important.
So the campaign is called Give Your Heart to a Child. It doesn't get any simpler than that. That's what you're asking. And remember, there are particular groups of children that are more vulnerable. You're talking about children older than 9, right? Special needs, and those who can take in a number of children that are brothers and sisters, so that you don't have to separate them.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you are just interested in perhaps giving it a try, there is respite care, which means you can take children out of the home for special occasions as well.
Yes.
Ladies, I hope we've touched a few more hearts today, and that you get a few more applications, a lot more applications in, and that we can have more children in families rather than in an institution.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for having us.
All right.
And,
Work, guys.
again, we want to remind them the office is on Regent Street. They can go on the website at Human Development. We also have an email at giveyourheart.gov.bz. Yep, so they could email us.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and take that final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.